What's the fastest you've seen a crowd go from excited to horrified? An animal show at Busch Gardens. The camels started fucking. Also at Busch Gardens, years ago, elephant took a gigantic, loud shit. I mean a monumental bra up. Goats ran over at warp speed and began feasting on it. The crowd was so appalled, it was wonderful. So much better than watching the goats form a pyramid. I'm giggling thinking about the poor, young girl MC attempting not to retch as the goat handlers tried to interrupt their shit party. Edit, I've been given the GOAT award. My life is full. But, apparently not as full as the goats. The entire assembled students from the elementary school where teacher/astronaut Krista McAuliffe taught at, who were broadcast live to the world, as they watched the Space Shuttle Challenge explode seconds after takeoff, killing all hands on board, including their teacher. Oh yeah, we had an all-school assembly to watch it, on a tiny TV up on the auditorium stage of course. I was in 3rd grade, we barely understood what was going on. The most unnerving thing was watching our teachers weeping quietly and trying to look strong for us. The climax of the last Twilight movie is a fight scene that goes on for 10 minutes. Vampires are ripping each other's heads off, giant wolves are throwing them around like chew toys, and one by one each of Bella's friends and family die around her. You can actually hear people in the audience react as each named character dies. And none of this happened in the book, which was criticized for its lack of climax. As each minute goes on, it feels like they improved the film's story to give it a real sense of danger and excitement and payoff to the series. So shit's intense. And right as they kill the big bad evil guy, the camera fades to black, pulls out, and reveals that all of it was a vision. The last 10 minutes didn't happen, it was someone seeing a future that might happen. No one died. Just a bunch of vampires and wolves standing around staring at each other in silence. Then they all walk away, alive and well. The crowd groans. A girl up front shouts, "Are you shitting me?" Everyone sits back in their seat, no one cares about what's happening on screen anymore. Some people are laughing because someone hit the undo button on the most exciting 10 minutes of the movie. Never have I seen a theater turn on a film so quickly and so hard. Pink Floyd often would have giant floating pigs released during the concert, you know, inflatable balloons. This would happen like halfway through the show. Well, people are smoking tons of pot, drinking, doing God knows what other drugs, so by the time the pig is released it's basically like God descending from the heavens. People were losing their shit at the pig. Well, it got caught in one of the wires and caught on fire. You've never seen so many stoners fall to their knees in terror/fear/sorrow over the death of a giant inflatable pig. There is no God anymore, his bacon got fried. I saw this on YouTube somewhere. A bodybuilder was strutting his stuff in front of a crowd, warming them up and everything at an event. They absolutely loved it. Many people had attended just to see him. He was at his peak, huge muscles and sculpted physique, absolutely amazing. I don't personally like the bodybuilding look, but you've got to respect hard work. The crowd was cheering him and he got so pumped up, so full of energy and emotion that instead of just walking onto the stage he did an impromptu jump flip. He launched himself high into the air and did this impressive flip. The crowd went berserk. But he was a bodybuilder, not a gymnast. He landed on his neck and died instantly, crumpling on the spot. It is one of the most horrific, sudden and unexpected things I've ever seen. Maybe the worst part was not all of the crowd realized immediately. They kept smiling and cheering for their hero for another minute before it sank in that they had just witnessed him die right in front of them and they were clapping for a dead man. Edit, his name was Sifiso Lungelo Thabiti, only 23 years old, from South Africa. He was a junior world champion in his weight category. For those who are asking, a few people in the comments have posted the link. It's here. I very much do not recommend watching, it's tragic and horrible. Obviously NSFW/NSFL for death. Monday Night Football, November 18, 1985. Washington Redskins vs the New York Giants. I was pretty young at the time, so being allowed to stay up late on a weekday was a rare occasion. During one of the plays, Joe Theismann was sacked by Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson of the Giants. The entire stadium went silent as Theismann would end up suffering a compound fracture of the tibia and fibula. What I remember most vividly is that the broadcast kept replaying it over and over again and seeing Shin snap at a 90-degree angle. It made me physically nauseous and had to walk out of the room. If I recall correctly, following the injury, broadcasting policies were changed so that constant replays like this would not be shown in the future. Edit, surprised to see how memorable this was for others as well. As a budding Redskins fan at the time, I gained a huge amount of respect for Lawrence Taylor that day. I understand that injuries are a part of all sports. It's a level of risk that many are willing to take. It was the need to keep replaying it over and over again from every imaginable angle that made the impression. Thank you all for sharing your similar experiences. Several years back and my band opens up for a hardcore punk outfit from Illinois at an all-ages venue where they have a sci-fi theme to their show. The singer dresses up as a mad scientist and the other three members dress up as his evil robots. They also have old television sets plugged in around the stage playing 1950s B-horror movies while they play. No one, including the people running the venue, have ever seen these guys play before, but going off of the theme we are expecting something awesome. That is until I'm backstage putting my equipment away and notice them all pounding back shots of tequila. When it's their turn to play, they're so hammered they can't even make it through one verse of a song. The singer ended up drop-kicking one of the TVs into the crowd of about 200 people, which caught fire. This caused the sound guy to end their set right there and they were banned from the venue for life. I've never seen a crowd go from happy to oh shit so fast. I was at a 4th of July fireworks show in Ft. Walton, Destin, Florida. The show was being staged from the inlet from the Gulf of Mexico to the bay. People were watching it from the other side of the inlet, the Highway 98 bridge, and from their boats on the water. The first salvo launched, but one of the shells exploded either in the launch tube or just above and ignited the rest of the show on the ground. Some launched a little bit before exploding. What was supposed to be a 30 to 40 minute show lasted 1 to 2 minutes. As the first shells blew up, I could see the silhouette of the technicians as they ran, like a stop-motion movie. The technicians were cool as hell since none of them were looking back at the explosions. I never realized how big the bursts were until I saw them going off on the ground. Everybody was trying to get away. We were being hit by pieces of fireworks. They weren't just landing on everybody, they were hitting us. My dad started the boat, but realized we couldn't move. A lot of kids were watching the show while they floated in the water. We were yelling at the other boats to stop because of the kids in the water. Fortunately, enough people heard/listened or realized what the problem now was that they stopped and locked everybody in place. Nobody was seriously hurt or killed, only a few techs were treated for minor burns. On that day, those techs outran Usain Bolt on the beach, wearing safety gear. There was a Derren Brown show called Remote Control. It was all about the effects of mob mentality. The crowd had to decide whether something nice happened or something bad happened to the same person. Each time the thing would be better or worse than the last. Eventually it led to them deciding that he would be kidnapped. They were all watching live on hidden cameras in a studio, by the way. When the kidnapping was attempted, it showed him evading them but running into the road and getting hit by a car. The whole crowd gasped and eventually people asked the filming to stop. The last part was just an actor/stuntman though. Was working as a backstage manager in a medium-sized concert venue. We had quite a famous band with a crazy singer that used weird props. On their IDA, a list bands give to venues with their wishes, they demanded we arranged 2 buckets of pig blood. Of course we did not do this. Show was going well, people were having a good time. Until the singer took out a steak knife he stole from our restaurant and started slicing his arms open. He was really making deep cuts and it was horrifying to watch. Blood was everywhere. Most people in the audience were shocked, some were dry heaving. When the show was over, the singer was dripping blood all over the backstage area, smearing it on the walls. I was fairly young and scheduled to work alone that night, so I was way in over my head. I tried to reason with him, but at that point he was very intoxicated and there was no point talking to him. Our backstage area looked like someone was murdered there. When I tried talking to their stage manager, he shut me up very quickly. He was probably sick of dealing with venue staff complaining about the singer. He did this shit all the time. The band was notorious regarding these kinds of crazy acts. I had to put up with a lot of shit working as a backstage manager. Bands wrecking the backstage rooms, making a mess everywhere, being sexist, being too fucked up to stand on their feet, you name it. But covering the whole stage and backstage with their blood? That was a first. We had to repaint the whole area because there is no point trying to clean the blood smears. Fairly shortly after, I changed careers because I could not deal with that anymore. I was at a sporting event where someone proposed to their girlfriend in the crowd and they put it on the jumbotron. They pan the camera to the woman, with the man's outstretched arm holding a ring. She's beaming as she realizes what's happening, and the crowd roars in a joyful applause. They then pan the camera down to the husband-to-be, who turns to face the camera. I'm sorry, there is no other way to say this, he was very ugly. Over the span of about 5 seconds, the joyful hooting and hollering turns into one gigantic 15,000-person uck sound. It was agonizing. In my recollection of the event, the uck sound transformed back into good for you. Hooting and hollering, but that might just be my memory trying to downplay the cringe factor. There's a brilliant clip of Van Halen playing, or attempting to play Jump. It starts off with an extended synth intro that lasts nearly a minute before the familiar intro comes in. The build-up is intense and the crowd are loving it. Then the guitars come in, and oh no. Oh god no. Turns out the synth that's been soloing all that time was out of tune. Nobody realized until the other instruments came in. The comic timing coupled with the cheesy drama of the song make it a perfect comedy moment worthy of anything from This Is Spinal Tap. Here's the clip. Edit, Jump on the album is in C major. The keyboard in the clip somehow went out as C sharp major. Again, probably the most comedic interval to be out by. The premiere of the trailer for Devil, 2010, at San Diego Comic-Con. It was at the annual Trailer Park panel where they just show trailers for upcoming movies for an hour or so. It's Hall H, the biggest at the con, and it's packed. The trailer plays, people are invested, you could hear a pin drop. Then the words display on screen from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan. Immediate uniform disappointed or from 2,000 people. Then everyone cracked up because we all felt the exact same way. I don't know that horrified is the right word, necessarily, but still. In elementary school we had a reptile show where a guy came in and showed us all these reptiles. It was basically a way of showing us kids how amazing nature was and how we should protect it, and it was pretty cool. Cut to one of the final things, a baby alligator with one snap of my finger she will fall asleep. Cue the awe. After a countdown he snapped his fingers and instead of falling asleep the alligator pissed all over the front of the crowd, spraying it everywhere. Keep in mind kindergarteners were front row, so little children were screaming about how they got alligator pee all over them. I laughed so hard I thought I'd pass out. TLDR, alligator pissed all over the kindergarteners. Was working as a 1-1 edtech years ago and it was the last day of school before summer vacation. Since we were a tiny rural school and had an equally tiny population of children, the district paid to take all of them out to have ice cream at a little stand down the road. So everyone is happy because we're all eating ice cream and chilling out before they go home, when suddenly I hear a loud, metallic bang and look to see a child's bike fall off the back of a loaded pickup truck. Whatever, I think, they'll just stop and throw it back into their junk pile. Then the kids start screaming and crying. Literally almost the entire school's worth of children is in some sort of hysterics. One girl shrieks, "They hit Dylan." What I missed was a second grade boy, Dylan, had cut school to go riding his bike, and, when he saw us, he decided to cross the road to see what was going on. He didn't look both ways and the pickup plowed into him going between 35 to 40 miles per hour. What I had thought was a bike falling off the back of the truck was actually his bike flying over the top of the truck while he went into the ditch. So now I run over to help this poor kid, and the guy in the pickup, who was a family friend of Dylan's, is sobbing. 4 small children went completely MIA in the frenzy that followed and were found by on some person's doorstep crying. We had to wait for over a half hour for the ambulance to arrive, so the school nurse was basically the only medic on scene until then. Dylan is repeating that he can't move, so of course we all think his spine is broken and are silently freaking out. Miraculously, Dylan was just bruised and left the hospital that day. He just graduated high school and is completely fine, but holy crap, I've never seen something so fun and innocent turn into something so horrific that quickly. A couple years back I was in the crowd at the Schlitterbahn Waterpark in Kansas City when the little boy died on the Verrückt water slide. My wife and I had literally just gotten off that water slide and were heading back to the benches where we had our stuff stored. When the slides would go down and then come up the hill to slow down, they had a specific pitch/sound they made, but one of the times that the slide was coming up the hill you could hear a whoosh that sounded a little bit different than the other times. I look up. At this point in walking down the path we were right next to where the uphill section was, see the slide bump against the net tunnel up top that was supposed to keep the slides on the track, and see this kid flying off the slide about 10 to 15 feet above the track. He lands at the bottom of the track and slides a few feet, but the sides of the track were too high to be able to see if he's moving, though we could see quite a bit of blood on the track from where he landed, and it didn't look good. Lifeguard runs over to the slide, along with a couple of bystanders that hopped the rope barriers, and everyone's yelling at the lifeguard to hurry up and take care of the kid to see if he's going to make it, or if he's okay, or what's going on. The lifeguard stopped where the kid was, looked like he was going to be sick, and then the bystanders stop, and the entire park just went completely silent. After a few seconds, though it felt like forever, there was a mad scramble of finding the boy's family, then later closing the park, and exiting the crowd, but you could definitely tell which people in the crowd were near the slide when everything happened and which people were in other parts of the park. Probably the single most unnerving thing I've ever experienced. It took a good couple of months before I could talk about it relatively normally. I don't think I'm ever going to want to go on roller coasters or thrill rides like that ever again. Not a big crowd, but about 10 of us. It was HS career day and we got to pick a career we were interested in and then go meet with people who actually work in that field. I was in the TV/film group. We were just supposed to go to a small local studio and meet some people, but day of the teacher/chaperone of our group told us there was a change of plans. We were going on site to a shoot and had to sign a bunch of NDAs. The teacher wouldn't tell us where we were going. We were all so stoked. We didn't live in a huge movie town, but there were a few famous movies and TV shows filmed in the area, so we were all abuzz about what we were going to see. It was a fucking Fiat commercial. I have never felt the energy of a group change so quickly. We were so bored standing on a hot race track watching a Fiat go round in circles. Apparently it was a new model that hadn't been announced yet, so yeah, I get the NDAs, but I couldn't think of a single person who'd give a fuck about it. Like it couldn't have even been an interesting car. PS I now work in film. It really isn't that exciting, but you do meet some wacky characters. We got a new principal at a small, tightly knit charter school. He was a large, middle-aged man who really wanted us to accept and like him. Honestly, it was really hard to. He had an authoritarian approach to an unusually democratic school and seemed inherently inauthentic/disingenuous. One day, he decided to tell us that if we reached these high testing scores, he would dance to Super Bass by Nicki Minaj. We did, because we all thought it would be funny, but the man took it way too far. There we were, all gathered together. There was so much giddy excitement and teenage giggling. We were all pumped that he was actually going to do it. But then he came into the damn room and it was like our shock was a visible ripple across the room. He had fully dressed up as Nicki Minaj, wig and feather boa, and it was honestly kinda horrific. He got on a table on all fours, started twerking, gyrating, and it was awful. None of the students or teachers could really look at him the same way. A lot of people said it was the day they lost all respect for the man. It was only a month or so into his time there. Most people's first impression was that moment and it was kinda scarring to see. Everyone had their phone out and I'm pretty sure that it still haunts him because he hasn't done anything similar since. I don't remember if anyone cheered, but I do remember the look on my friend's face because she had been sitting at the table he climbed onto and was way too close to his ass. Derren Brown, Remote Control. Derren Brown is a TV magician, illusionist, sort of like a Penn and Teller of psychics, and this show is on mob mentality. He has an audience pranker man, Chris, who has consented to be messed with for a Derren Brown show at an unknown date. There is a studio audience watching and voting on whether he gets a good prank or bad prank, with hidden cameras tracking him and Chris's friends and family luring him to certain areas where pranks can happen. The pranks start out silly, good, he's the lucky customer at a shop, bad, he's accused of shoplifting. The pranks slowly get more and more extreme and the audience are voting the bad pranks all the time, laughing as Chris's life is slowly falling apart in one day. It ends with Chris being let out of a police car near his house and the audience have voted for a scary black van to pull up and kidnap Chris. As the van pulls up, Chris runs away and the men chase him down, but when he turns the corner a car comes and knocks Chris down. The studio goes quiet, the lights go on and Derren says nothing, letting the audience take in what happened, giving them nothing. After a while, Derren explains that this was all set up and Chris was in on the whole thing and the audience were the ones being tested, explaining how being part of a crowd can make someone lose their morality. They were just cheering a man having his life ruined and being kidnapped, fearing for his life.